The following is audio of the public forum held by the Greater Madison Area Chamber of Commerce Governmental Affairs Committee between the 6 Madison City Commission candidates. The forum was held on Thursday, May 30th. We join the forum now with the opening remarks from Jeremiah Corbin.
Rotary Club. I'm actually the president of the club this year. That's been a lot of fun. I've got to meet a lot of nice people with that and learn a lot of things about our community through that. I really enjoy it. In addition to being a utility commissioner, I also serve as the liaison on the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that's been a real educational experience for me. It's fun watching those people make decisions. I serve on the Electric Advisory Task Force and the Water Task Force. I also get to sit in on the Sidewalk Committee as they make decisions, which is pretty interesting. Sidewalks has been a pretty hot topic in Madison since that started about 10 years ago. And overall, I've really enjoyed my experience, and I'd like another shot at it. Thank you for the time.
All right, Jeremiah Corbin, thank you for your introduction. And now 3 minutes to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert.
Good evening. My name is Marshall Dennert. I moved to Madison in '86. I've worked for the hospital as a lab tech for a couple years. Then I moved out to Rosebud as plant manager. Worked there for 3 years. I'm currently drive bus for the school since 2003, and I am a businessman. I own Madison Inks Printing for the last 14 years. Also, I'm a trustee at the United Methodist Church for the last 4 years, and I just want to let the citizens know of Madison that I'm in their corners, and I will be their voice for the city. That's about it.
We appreciate you being here tonight. And now on to our next candidate, Danny Frisbee Griffin. Mr. Frisbee.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the forum and those that are listening on KJAM. If you go to the KJAM Amazing Madison website, there is a video of introduction that you can play at your convenience. It'll tell you about my history and where I come from. My wife works at Bethel. She's here in the audience. My daughter, Lorraine, just started 2 new jobs at McDonald's and also at Bethel. I'm retired, United States Air Force, 26 years, retired as a colonel. I'm a Midwestern native, grew up in North Dakota. Please don't hold that against me. We decided that South Dakota was the right place for us to call home after our careers. What I'm doing now, I am currently entrepreneur, started Sound Raven, a drone imagery company with 2 other partners, Matthew Woolman and Joshua Silver. We're currently got some business opportunities in Sioux Falls area that we're doing, and here in Madison. Substitute teacher in Madison Central School District, and this past year I had the pleasure of being the high school girls basketball coach. It's the job I've wanted ever since I was in high school. And so I really appreciated that opportunity. I'm also a professor for the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. You guys probably didn't know that. I teach an online course in public policy. It's called Applied Public Policy. And what they do is it's all about decision making and how the policy program works in the United States. They have to actually do a point paper and try to convince me to take their position forward. I'm a volunteer, commander at the Ronald Westby Post 2638 here in town for the Veterans of Foreign Wars. And I'm going through the various chairs for the Department of South Dakota Veterans of Foreign Wars, and I'm scheduled to be the commander for South Dakota in 2019-2020 timeframe. American Diabetes Association volunteer. We started the diabetes program here in Madison and has expanded throughout the southeastern corner of South Dakota. For wellness, Madison Lake Cycling is probably another one of my close loves. We are a wellness organization here in town, centric on bicycling and safety, and we do some races here. We had our first one last October. We also host and put on the Madison Bike Safety Day, if I could put a plug in for that. That is May 13th and is scheduled to be held at the Madison Regional Medical Center again. And we have sponsors that help us with that program. So that's where I'm at. 26 years, my experience, I was a Lockheed Martin program manager managing about a $243 million program. I've run 2 airports in my past. I love to be involved in the community, and I'm just looking forward to giving back to the place where we call home. Thank you.
And now we're going to move on to Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson.
I'm winding up my first term on the city commission and asking for re-election, your vote of confidence. I was a commissioner of finance for a year, and I've spent my time with public works the last 2 years. I have to share this with you. When I got home about 5:30, and we had 2 grandsons that stay with us a lot, and they were kind of circling me and circling the table, refusing to eat, and which is good for a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old. And I happened to open my mail with my library news. I'm the commission representative to the library. And I found it interesting because the title was fake news, and I hope that's not what this was about, but it was a forum there's going to be at the library on fake news. And I think as I listen to the people talk, and I know a little bit about some of the folks here, the one thing I think that's common is we all want to serve. We all come here wanting to serve. We may have various opinions and differences about what we think, how we should deal with things, but I think we all come to strengthen the community and the lives of the people we serve. I had an uncle one time asked me what I thought wealth was, and of course my response was a lot of money. And then he said, what else would wealth be? And I said, no debt. If we walked through life with no debt in our lives, think what that would be like. That was one of the concerns I had when I came on the commission, was our debt ratios. They were not overt, and I don't think they are, but keeping that income to debt ratios in a comfortable place for us, and I think we work at that. I think everybody at this table has that common interest. So I think wealth can be defined as a lot of things. The wealth of a community is the strength of a community. Sometimes that's not just fiscal. Sometimes I think it really has much to do with the quality of life we have, and that's one of my major interests, is increasing the quality of life of the people who live in this community. I also am concerned about forming good governance for the future. In other words, when those of us who continue to serve are gone, who will serve and what will we hand them? So it's a pleasure to be here tonight. I don't think anything you're going to hear up here is fake news. There may be some mistakes, and very much on my part sometimes, but I think we're all very much interested in being good governors. So.
All right, thank you, Kelly Johnson. And before we move on, I just want to remind the audience, if you do have a question, just get a hold of one of the folks in the back, and they will get you a card, and you can write down your question, and they'll bring it up forward. And we're going to move on to the next candidate, Nelson. Mr.
Thanks, Chris. My name is Nels Nelson. I've been with the state of South Dakota for 17 years, but first I got a lovely wife, Jolynn, who works at Shopko. I got a daughter, Melissa, with 4 grandkids. We all live here in Madison. Madison is our home, and I want to make our home better. And that's why I'm running for city commissioner. I'm a state employee. I've had doings with state highway projects, rebuilding, being in with the soil densities, the pavements, concrete structure repairs. A lot of that, I believe, is in the future of Madison, that we need to improve our roads, in the city, sewer, water. We need to budget and stick on our budgets so we can keep our utility bills and to a minimum, or keep them flat anyhow, so we don't have to keep raising them to rob Peter to pay Paul to keep things going. It's a great community, and I appreciate your vote. Thanks.
Nelson, thank you so much. And then our 6th candidate is Fred Snodderly.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of you and let you know what I stand for and my experience. I'm a retired Air Force, 22 years, served proudly and honorably, was in a civil engineering squadron for that entire time. My career field as far as the Air Force was water and wastewater and solid waste, and professional military education, had a lot of management and leadership schooling involved in that, which I applied to the rest of my career. In total, I have 42 years of public service, After retiring from the Air Force, I took a job in Pierre as their maintenance operations director, directly responsible and definitely involved in a $10 million water or wastewater upgrade at that city of Pierre. Also quite a few millions of dollars invested in your streets and your water main replacement. From there, I ended up out in Idaho and was working for the city of Nampa as their water superintendent. Took care of quite a few hundred miles of water main and provided water to those folks. I'm running because I believe that the city needs some solid management and leadership and guidance in some of the projects. After my wife and I came back here 5 years ago, and until recently I was your public works director for the last 5 years. Definitely involved in all kinds of the projects that we've seen accomplished over the last 5 years. Your wheeling option, directly involved in the crisis management for the Clearwell roof collapse. Took charge of that situation as it happened and directed individuals and staff to try to get that water plant back online, and we did in actually about 22 hours. I believe that my experiences over the past 42 years would benefit the city of Madison and would really appreciate your vote on April 11th. Thank you.
All right, Fred Snodderly, thank you so much. And we're going to get to our questions here, and just remind the audience once again, if you have questions, please get them on a card, and we'll get them asked up here. So we're going to start with the first question for Marshall Dennert, and then we'll kind of go down the row and then back to Mr. Corbin here. And the first question is, what do you see as the biggest challenge that the city of Madison faces over the next 5 to 10 years, and what is your feeling about what you can do as a city commissioner to face that challenge?
Well, one thing that we need to look at, and I will try to keep it to a minimum, is we need to look at wants versus our needs. I know we all want a lot, and we are on a budget, so we need to look at our needs and what we need instead of what we want. Doesn't mean that we can't get some of our wants. Like Commissioner Johnson said, once we get our debt ratio down, we can start looking at some of the wants. But like I said in my opening statement, I'm going to be there in the corners of the citizens of Madison and look at being the voice for them and to do the right thing. Thank you.
Belong now to Danny Frisbee Griffin. What's the biggest challenge that Madison faces over the next 5 to 10 years?
One of the biggest challenges will be continue our growth, whether it's economic development, growth and population growth in the students of DSU. One aspect really to bring that into focus is having a master plan that reaches out not just next year, 3 years, 5 years, and 7 years, and 10 years, and then you really can't go anywhere in a specific direction if you don't have a plan to deviate from. And that's one of the things that I'll have to delve into if I end up on the commission, is taking a look at those master plans. What is their strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities? What are some of the threats that we have to take care of immediately as we move forward as a city? Coming together as a community is always something we're going to have to continue working on, especially if the economy starts taking a downswing or there's some other aspects that come along, whether it's a natural disaster. But having a plan. Went to one of the FEMA meetings here recently, and they talked about the 4-inch water pipes and having a plan on replacing those items both for fire safety and flow through to the residences. But having a master plan gives you that synergy to begin taking a logical step, incremental approach to maintaining that growth. Thank you.
Frisbee Griffin, and now down to Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, what's the biggest challenge that we face over the next 5 to 10 years?
Chris, Danny mentioned planning, and I think that has a great deal to do with our biggest challenge. I can't not be specific, though. I have to say that I think our infrastructure is a critical issue. We continue to when I worked with Fred, he did a lot to educate me about that. That we have a lot of, and Danny mentioned the 4-inch lines and those kinds of things. I think we have to be focused on that, not as a single item but as an item that is clearly a need for us, is to be vigilant about planning how we replace our infrastructure, water, sewer, electricity, all those kinds of things, and yet maintaining what the things that need to be maintained. And so that doesn't sound particularly exciting at sometimes, but it is a critical piece that we govern over, is making sure that our infrastructure and the maintenance of our equipment and our other items are well cared for. And I think our staff, our employees, do a great job. We have assets there sometimes we forget about among the people who work for the city. The other thing I just wanted to mention when you asked that question is how do we manage city government? Sometimes I served on the school board, and one of the things that always frustrated me, we always seemed to be having to pass things, but they're basically mandated by the state, what the state said we had to do. And sometimes I think we have to think a little bit out of the box in order to manage things well, and not what are the state regulations, the state guidelines, all that time. There are times I wonder about our form of government, and we shouldn't look at that, something that moves a little bit for us. And that's not threatening. It's not to say anybody who serves in governance of the city right now does a poor job. But sometimes the form of government we have moves a little slow, I think, for some of our ability to react and to deal with things. So that planning, that structure are critical kinds of things. But that takes some thought.
Thanks. All right, we're going to move on to our next candidate, Nelson Nelson. Mr. Nelson, what's the biggest challenge that you see over the next 5 to 10 years here?
Well, I believe we're going to have to start getting a plan and start scheduling stuff on a routine. Get the plan set, start setting a schedule, getting a budget in order. And the biggest thing is getting budget, a plan, and figuring out the needs of what and prioritizing what we need instead of just coming around going, well, I think we'll do this road or this road. We need to plan and budget for what we need to do as we go and make it outreach like a 5-year plan. What we're going to do in the next 5 years is what we need to do, and we need to work off of that plan. We can't really focus too far off our plan or our budgets. We need to stay straight and narrow to what we have and work on everything. There's water main projects coming up. Washington project's going to be coming up next year. That's going to have all new sewer and water, storm sewer underneath it. We need to plan and have that done and figure out if we're going to upgrade, let's do our upgrades now when it's open like we did on 2nd Street. And if we're doing any other city streets, if we're tearing them up, let's get the utilities done underneath them so we're not tearing them up again or having water main breaks. And if we need bigger mains, let's put them in when we get the roads apart. Thanks.
Now we're going to move on to Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, what's the biggest challenge that you see over the next 5 to 10 years?
I think your biggest challenge is going to be your infrastructure replacement and the cost associated with it. We've been identifying water mains that have been failing or antiquated, well, ever since I've been here for the past 5 years, and I know my staff identified them long before that. You just had $11 million worth of water main, 4-inch water main that was identified through Banner and Associates. Taking care of that would actually, you upgrade those lines and stuff, you increase your insurance ratings, you get a better rate on your insurance and stuff. Another thing is going to be our roads and stuff are falling apart. A lot of this stuff has been, either in the ground or paved over, for the past 20 to 60 years. And it takes time to actually get those replaced. It takes a lot of money to do it. So finding the funding for that is going to be a crucial thing for the commission to take care of. We've actually found some money over the past couple of years with our front footage fee that actually takes care of some of our road improvements along with our STIP funds that we get from the state. So those are things we need to really look at over the next 5 years.
Fred Snodderly, we appreciate your answer there. And 90 seconds now goes to Mr. Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, what is the biggest challenge that you see for Madison over the next 5 to 10?
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Chris. I honestly think infrastructure is important, but that's pretty all-encompassing. I think to narrow that down a bit, how we address water in our community is going to be a huge challenge, whether it be for economic development and the stability and how we get drinking water and treat our wastewater to flood mitigation and flood management. That's a huge issue in Madison. It seems like we have a 100-year flood about every 7 to 15 years, so we need to get serious about how we can minimize those risks, and that's going to take some resources and some planning on the city's part, and the city needs to be a part of that, along with the county and hopefully the federal government, because it's going to be a stiff challenge. But we also need to make sure we're dedicating resources to upgrading our water infrastructure. As many of the other candidates said, we've got several plans on the shelf ready to go. We just need to make sure we're lining up the resources in an appropriate way so we can address these challenges.
Hey, Corbin, thank you, Mr. Corbin. And we're going to address the next question to Danny Frisbee Griffin. Mr. Frisbee Griffin, a few of you mentioned economic development here in the last answer, but Madison just went over 7,000 for population. We got to change the sign at the edge of town, and that was exciting. But I'd be interested in your feelings on our past economic development efforts and what you think we can do better in the future to grow our local economy here in the city of Madison and Lake County.
Businesses and families come to a town that they feel is safe. Businesses and families come to a community that comes together and has a great school district. Economic development will follow those lines. In the past, we've brought a number of businesses here to town. Raven is a strong suit. Rosebud, we've got homes being built here. One of the things or challenges I think we need to really take a look at is our downtown area, our downtown economic development. There's a couple of ideas, talk about a fresh voice and some thinking outside the container. Something like an downtown economic district that they have fees or dues and you use that to use as matching grants for businesses to upgrade the fronts of their establishments. There's different things that we can do to bring those businesses in. I think it all rests with families and a desire to come to a safe place.
Frisbee Griffin, thank you. Now, Mr. Kelly Johnson, give us your take on past economic development efforts and what you see we can do better in the future.
I think we have to think about what economic development means in terms of, we oftentimes think of Main Street, but really our Main Street is more extensive than just those four or five blocks that we've traditionally thought of that way. One of the past directors of the chamber, and this is 2 or 3 directors ago, said they were trying to figure out a way that we could have Main Street be what it currently is, down to what it was Garfield School, past Garfield School, and then through Washington Avenue. That would really represent what Main Street is in Madison. And that's kind of thinking outside the box. How you make that come together isn't necessarily the easiest thing, but that idea that Danny shared, I think, is a critical piece. That what do we think of it as economic development? The other thing that I think is important is, my good friend Jim Abbott once said, when we grow our own, those are the ones that stay and have some of the best growth. In other words, are there enterprises that we're overlooking in our efforts to try to bring new enterprises in? Are we overlooking people who locally might might do well if we somehow could support that as an economic development, whether it be a retail business, manufacturing, or something. We sometimes think it has to come from somewhere else to be new, but sometimes there are ideas and growth internally for us here. And I think we also need to look at that, because when you grow your own, it oftentimes stays. So.
Now down to Nels Nelson. Mr. Nelson, what do you see as our past economic development successes, and what do you think we can do better in the future?
I think one of the biggest things is we need to keep our kids back in our own community. A lot of our kids are growing up, moving to college, or going out to college, looking for that big atmosphere or big job. We don't get a lot of our own kids back into our own community. If we don't keep our kids in our own community, pretty soon we're not going to have our own community. It's hard to get other people to come in if we can't keep our own people in our own community. That's one of my beliefs. We just finally got our grandkids to move back to our community, and it's a blessing just to have them in our community. But we need to work with outside businesses, even if we could get something to go with the college to help the college kids start some type of a computer program type thing that we could get growing in our community, to have everybody just work together to grow. Thanks.
So much. And now to Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, give us your take on past economic development and future economic development opportunities.
I think our past economic achievements have been trying to bring in some of the industry, like you've got, the plastic polymer came in from Arlington. I think they left there because they couldn't get the building that they needed. Our industrial park actually attracts quite a few folks to at least come and look. Some of the deterrents that we're finding are that we can't support them, their water and wastewater needs, especially in the industrial park. And that was what the LIC was talking with the commission over the past few years about, is trying to get that infrastructure and the numbers that we can supply them as far as the water that we can give a larger industry. But the problem is we can't support the wastewater that they would give back to us. So that's something that we need to look at to try to actually improve our chances of getting some more business and economic growth in Madison.
Thank you so much. And now we'll pose the same question to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, give us your take on past economic development and future opportunities in the community.
Oh, the recent past, we've had some pretty excitement economic development activity. I think over the last few years with Julie Gross at the LAIC, it's really been a real positive energy, and she really encompasses what Madison means as a community. And I've really enjoyed seeing her do her work down there. Going forward, I really think the greatest opportunity Madison has is to collaborate with Dakota State. They've got some amazing things going on right now with cybersecurity. It seems like they're on the cutting edge of that technology, and it's something that's just going to be huge going forward as everything migrates to the cloud and technology kind of takes over everything we do, from our smartphones in our pockets to our refrigerators. So that's bringing a lot of interesting folks into our community that want to be here and want to be a part of what we have going on. So I think going forward, that's a huge ace in the hole for our community.
Corbin, thank you. And now to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert, can you explain your feelings on past economic development and then new economic development opportunities?
As a businessman in Madison, I see a lot and hear a lot from other business owners. Some of the things that affects them is the utility rates. I know we've just lost Loopy's a couple months ago. I heard we were losing another business here come on Friday. I think we just need to work towards keeping people in town shopping instead of going to Sioux Falls or Brookings. I think if we keep them in town, it will help everybody. If they're going to go to Sioux Falls to do grocery shopping, whatever kind of shopping, and they need some stuff done in other areas, they will just take all their business downtown to Sioux Falls. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'll remind the audience one more time that if you have questions, get a hold of someone in the back and they'll get you a card and we can ask the question. All right. This next question, we'll start with Mr. Johnson. And it also deals with economic development, but another side of it, and that's housing. Back in January of 16, the city of Madison received the results of a housing study which recommended a rental housing inspection program. Do you support that recommendation? And if so, what would you do specifically if elected to help create a rental housing inspection program in the city of Madison?
I think we have to do that. I think we have to have some form of building inspection for rental properties. They affect the quality of neighborhoods, and I have a number of rental properties that I live around. I have no problem with that. It's just that I think we have had from time to time difficulties with housing units and not just rental properties that should be addressed, be taken care of. And our mechanism right now for addressing that is somewhat cumbersome. And so the inspection process would probably allow us a little more latitude to ask people to upgrade certain things or to take care of certain things that at times right now we have some difficulty getting done. It's not an easy question. It's not an easy thing to do, to ask somebody to upgrade their property or take care of something. I kind of stand in defense of property owners at times. But I also think there is a point at which I always believe everybody in our world should have 30 seconds, should have a meal on the table every night and know that. They should have a roof over their head that with good decent housing, and I think people should know they have health care. Everything else starts to be optional after that. But one of those things is people should have a place to live and they should know that it's well cared for. And so I have to support that because I think it's a quality of life issue for the people here in our community or those who come to visit or go to school.
On to Nels Nelson, do you support the recommendation that would create a rental housing inspection program, and what would you do to help create that if you do support?
I believe it would be a good feature for our community, and if the city's going to be in charge of the ones inspecting these rental properties, I believe the person that's inspecting them should be trained by a state agency so that they know what they're looking for and be certified by the state and have a set of goals to be going by instead of just making up their own policies and procedures of safety standards for the rental property. I believe it'd be a good thing. I got rental property by my house, and everybody deserves a place to live. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, Nels Nelson, and now to Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, do you support the rental housing inspection program idea? And if so, would you help create that if you were elected?
I do actually support that. I think it's a really good idea. I think our problem's going to be that you have to have, you get into the realm of straightening out your ordinances first so you have something that's enforceable, and then you have to have the person to actually go out and conduct the inspections in the form of a code enforcement officer. I've long thought that, if you straighten out your ordinances, at least it gives us something to stand on and sets a standard for others to actually follow. So that's what we would look at that point.
Thank you, Fred Snodderly. And now we're going to come down to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, do you support the rental housing inspection program idea? And if so, would you help create that inspection program?
I think that that's a good idea. We have a lot of rental property in Madison, being a college town, and I know a number of the other college communities in our state have gone to a rental property inspection program over the past few years. I think Vermilion's the most recent, and they've been able to clean up some properties that have been creating some issues for a number of years. I think a rundown rental property can certainly leave a bad taste in somebody's mouth in terms of their experience with Madison, so I'd like to find ways to minimize that. I've had a desire the first time I ran for city commission to put a code enforcement officer in. We do have some blighted areas. We have some people that don't necessarily follow the ordinances, but before we do that, we do need to clean up our ordinances and then make sure that the city's following the ordinances as well. Specifically, you need to keep your grass at a certain height, and the city is responsible for an enormous amount of flood property. So if we're going to do code enforcement, we need to make sure the city's abiding by the rules as well. So that'll be something we'll need to look at before we implement it. But yeah, I would definitely support it.
All right, Jeremiah Corbin, we appreciate that. And now on to Marshall Dennert. So, Mr. Dennert, do you support the recommendation of a rental housing inspection program? And if so, what would you do if elected to help implement that?
Yes, I do support it. I used to own a couple houses that I rented. It's a tough job to keep up. Obviously, my renters moved out, moved on to someone else, and I just simply got rid of it because it is a tough job. One of the things we could do, like everybody else said, we need to set good sound code and follow them and treat everybody the same that has rental property. Thank you.
Marshall Dennert, and now on to Danny Frisbee Griffin. Mr. Frisbee Griffin, do you support the rental housing inspection program? And if so, what would you do to create and implement?
I think on this question, I'm glad I'm going last. I do support the rental inspection concept, but there's some things that we need to understand as we develop that and actually even study the ordinances and make the changes that would clean it up. First we have to, we as a city have to act in accordance with those ordinances like we've talked about. But here's one thing that nobody's talked about: budget. Code enforcers carry a budget line. So we need to marry the ordinance review and marry the code enforcer and education, okay? Education for our citizens that understand these codes are going to now be enforced. Here's a warning. It's going to take a process. Public policy is a process. It's incremental in nature when you develop it and as you execute it. And that's where we are here in the city. We are the executors of policy. We're the ones that want to make sure that our cities are safe, our rental properties are safe, our the properties that the city owns are safe. And that's all done through the ordinances, and code enforcement is one avenue to do it. There's others too. So you got to look at the entire concept. We got the Rental Property Association guidelines are out there. And using some of those tools to help build the ordinances that allow us to make sure that everybody's got a safe home to live in. That concept, but there's some things we need to understand.
Frisbee Griffin, we appreciate your answer and from all the other candidates. All right, we're going to move on to our next question, and the first one to answer will be Nelson in this question. And it deals, we just talked about rental housing, and this deals more with commercial property in blighted areas. The city's recently been involved in purchasing rundown property, and should this policy continue, and what should be done with those properties?
I don't believe the city of Madison should be in real estate at all. The Winks property, no. The state's got programs in Department of Health and everything else, the asbestos and stuff. We got $150,000 tied up in tearing down a building that we paid $1 for, and we got $25,000 for cleaning up the asbestos out of it. I don't know where we're going to get our money back out of a flat piece of ground that we got so much money invested in. We bought sample our flowers out with the FEMA program. We took a business out of our community that's no longer bringing a tax revenue back into our community. If we're going to start buying businesses, we should have bought the dentist office right next door to it. We should be buying Campbell Supply. There's a lot of our businesses that are in the floodplain. Are we going to be buying them businesses out also? And if we are, where are they going to go? We're talking about building our infrastructure to our community. If we're buying the businesses and getting rid of them, we're not moving forward, we're moving backwards. Thank you.
To Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, do you support the city being the one to buy rundown properties?
I actually don't. I don't think that we should be in the real estate business. There are situations, however, that present themselves to us, Sampler Flowers being one of them. You've got a business that the owner's basically shortly going to close the doors, or we're going to close the doors on that building. We had the opportunity to actually invest a little bit along with some FEMA money to get that building and that property purchased, and then razz that building so we can actually get that out of the floodplain area. Last time it flooded in 2012, that whole area was covered in water, and it's a good thing to get something like that out of the floodplain area. I disagree. I think the Winks building was a bad purchase on the city's part. I know we had a lot of safety issues with teens and everybody getting into that building and goofing around in there. I think we should have looked harder and pushed harder on the owner to basically board that up and safeguard that building and take care of the problem that he basically abandoned and walked away from. So overall, probably not getting in the real estate business, but there are those special circumstances where you can benefit the city and get a building out of the floodplain area that probably would be a wise thing for us to do. Thank you.
All right, Fred Snodderly, thank you. And now on to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, do you support the policy of having the city being involved in purchasing rundown property?
I don't know if there's a policy to buy rundown properties in town. I believe it's more of a case-by-case basis. In the case of the sample building, we had an opportunity to leverage some federal grant money, and for a small contribution for the city, we were able to clean up property that was rapidly deteriorating, and I believe it became a safety issue. That building could have slipped into the creek in some flash flood and really caused a lot of damage that would have cost way more than the close to $20,000 the city invested in cleaning that up. And then the Wink property's been a nuisance property for years, and so far the city has had very little invested. I believe we've authorized $2,001 to clean it up so far. We've been able to get some grant money for the asbestos removal. Once that's done, there shouldn't be any major contaminants in the area, and I'm hoping we can recoup most of the costs in that building and get rid of a safety hazard downtown. But in terms of the city going around buying up property, I just don't think that's true. It's more as cases come up, we analyze them as a commission and make a decision based on the facts.
Thank you, Jeremiah Corbin. And now on to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert, should the city be involved in purchasing these rundown properties?
No, I do not believe that. First of all, I want to take time to make a correction. When I did write my answers to the newspaper, I was under the assumption that it was $50,000 to remove the asbestos, and like a couple of the people said up here, we did get a state grant, $25,000. And I do believe the bid come in under that, so that won't cost taxpayers any money to remove the asbestos, but we still are looking at that $100,000 for demolition. You know, if the city can find a way to take care of these buildings without costing the taxpayers any money, I'm for it, but it should be left up to the owners to take care of the rundown buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall Dennert. And now on to Danny Frisbee Griffin. Mr. Frisbee Griffin, do you believe that the city should be involved in buying these rundown properties?
It comes back to a couple key words: blighted buildings or blighted properties. In public policy, there's a philosophy called the broken windows approach. People don't want to live in a city where there's rundown buildings, there's broken windows, so you fix those things. So people want to remain in your community, whether they're adults or kids or people want to move in. So buying the Wank building, I'm not going to second guess the process and the decision making that happened to buy that property. What I look at now is there's an opportunity here. You know, the city has it. So what do we do with it? You know, a couple of things you'll read in the paper tonight is I mentioned the fact, well, let's use the property to build another green space, put in a bike park or a single mountain track trail, and something similar to what Brookings has. And there's kids coming from all over to ride that track in Brookings at the nature park. People come to those events. Or there's another thing I put in the paper is the fact that it'd be nice if we had a veteran statuary park. All right, a property that people can drive in and take a moment of reflection, walk along the statues of the veterans. That's another concept that we can take a look at. But what are you going to do with the property? You're going to tear it down and leave it to grow grass, and all of a sudden we got ordinances that we're not cutting the grass to the right height. So come up with something. Let's connect the paths and the green spaces all throughout this town. There's a lot of people that ride bike. So let's take this as an opportunity.
All right, thank you, Danny Frisbee Griffin. And now on to Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, do you think the city should be involved in buying rundown properties?
Three things that came to mind. One is the property that we purchased, it was on the floodplain. I don't think anybody's interested in having us just gobbling up property, but we had an opportunity there because of the FEMA grant to subsidize, and they paid the lion's share of that for us, of removing that property. And not only was it on floodplain, but also it was in a location very close to one of the waterways, the creek. And at that building, if you listen to the testimony of some of the family when we made those moves, it was a public meeting. They said the building, one of the kids said the building is not in good shape. It's unlikely that somebody will pick that property up after they were done with the business and take it on. It was a good opportunity for us to remove that from near the waterway where it could wash into the creek in a flood situation and really make what could be a difficult situation much worse. So I supported that, and I still do. The Wink building, I was a dissenter on that, and I wasn't dissenting because I didn't think something needed to be done. It was at that time there were some things I wasn't sure about. I am concerned that whatever we do with that property, that we recoup our costs for the demolition, whatever we invest in that. And I think that's a critical piece we have to have. I don't mind us buying things and fixing them up. I just have some trouble with it when it costs us a lot of money and we can't find some way to recoup that. The last thing quickly is I checked with somebody that we have a lot of green space now. We have a lot of property. We spend a tremendous amount of time mowing those lawns, caring for them, the sidewalks on those, taking care of those. It is a problem. So I don't want us in that business anymore. But we have to think about those things. Again, planning is the issue.
Johnson, Kelly Johnson, and now we're going to move on to our next question. And the first answerer is going to be Fred Snodderly down at the end. The commission paid for an outside wage study for the benefit of our city employees. Do you support using wage studies when it comes to paying city employees a certain wage, or do you feel like using a wage study isn't a good idea?
I think the city of Madison actually needed a wage study. The prior wage study was done 10 years prior to that. The investment was about $26,000 to actually come in and do a wage study and provide adequate job descriptions for the city employees. I think it kind of took a left turn, and we turned around and basically it was not applied fairly and equitably to all staff, and I think that we did a disservice by that. I was there when they actually come up with that. I recommended the company that did it, and my warning to the commission at that time was make sure that we apply this fairly and equally to all city staff. In other words, if you come in and the high end is a $13,000 pay raise and the low end is a $383 annual increase, there's a huge disparity there, and it's not fairly applied to all staff. It does them an injustice at that point. I support a good wage study, and I don't believe that this one was actually applied fairly as it should have been.
All right, thank you, Fred Snodderly. Go to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, do you believe in using a wage study to set the wages for city staff?
one of the constant themes of this evening's been infrastructure investment, but I believe the most vital resource the city has is its employees. And I think the commission needs to make sure they have tools to ensure that they're compensating their employees appropriately. So we were more than overdue to have a wage study done. It, as Mr. Snodderly mentioned, had been a number of years. And so I think it is a good tool. The commission needs to have information out there what the market is for these different positions when determining what wages are when the budget is up. Because, as I said, the employees are the most important asset the city has.
Jeremiah Corbin, now to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert, do you believe in using a wage study to set wages for city employees?
Yes, I believe in using a study. Again, as long as it's applied fairly, and it's a good tool to use, especially knowing where to start out at. I guess as a businessman, I'm a firm believer. I'm willing to pay someone a decent wage as long as they do the job that they're hired to do. Thank you.
Frisbee Griffin, do you believe in using a wage study to set wages for city employees?
All the time. Whether it's in the contract world or in city management, hiring employees, you need to understand what a good or fair, equitable range of wages is for that particular position and responsibilities. But it's got to be married with that. Okay, well, how much authority does that person have? How much supervision is he going to be performing? How many, what does his job entail? So it's a tool in the tool chest to determine fair wages for your employees. I totally agree with everybody's on the panel is going to say that it's the people that make the city work. It's the people. You take care of the people, they're going to take care of the city. They're going to take care of making sure us commissioners look good, because it's the people that do it, not us. So you got to take care of it. That's a tool. And it's how you use that tool in the culture of the organization that you're working in that determines how effective and efficient we are going to be.
Now on to Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, do you believe that a wage study should be used to set city salaries?
And I do believe that, and it was applied. The word was used fairly. I struggle with that word fair because what somebody might think is fair might not seem fair to someone else, and that's understandable. I think we did the very best we could to see that there was equal distribution. Are there adjustments to be made? Sure, there's always adjustments to be made. That the system within the wage study that we took on provided for the ability to make those adjustments. We have to have some standard by which we thoughtfully reimburse our employees, which are a very valuable asset to us, I found out in the last 3 years. And my appreciation for them has grown greatly. But to reimburse them for their work. That being said, I thought this was, and I still believe strongly that it is. Even if we had done it this last year, I still would endorse it again, doing that study and working towards it. It's a system that's used in other places, and I don't think we do just, there are several cities in South Dakota that use the same process we use. I don't think we do something just because somebody else does it. I think we do it because we find out that it's working other places, and there is the ability to make some adjustments in it based on our needs so well that we were able to set out basically wages for the next 2 years, which helps us in the planning process. It was difficult, but it was the right thing to do.
Kelly Johnson, thank you so much. And now on to Nels Nelson. And Mr. Nelson, would you support a wage study to set city salaries?
I've been on the receiving edge of wage studies. As long as you're comparing apples to apples and community size to community size, you're going to go somewhere. And if you got an equipment operator in Madison compared to Coleman, there's going to be a big difference in a survey. And it's not going to be a fair survey. You got to get the community size to the community size, If your secretary's looking for a pay raise and you're doing the survey, you got to get a community size for what she is doing in her office and dispatching of what she's doing. It's got to be comparable. It's got to be apples to apples. You can't be comparing apples to grapefruit and thinking you're going to get a lemon out of it, because that's what you're going to get. It's a lemon. I've been on it. The state of South Dakota has done surveys against other states. Do I think they're fair? No. Do they work? I wouldn't say so. No, it don't seem like it's ever fair to the employee, but it seems it's the upper management that needs it for a guiding tool of which way they need to go. So, thanks.
This next question, the first person to answer will be Jeremiah Corbin down here. And our next question is dealing with the recycling program. And if elected, would you support the expansion of the city's recycling program to include something like single-source recycling? And maybe just give us your thoughts on the city's recycling program. You got 90 seconds.
Recycling is an integral part of what the city of Madison does in terms of solid waste. The city offers solid waste pickup. When I ran 3 years ago, I was very interested in single source, and as I've learned things, I've learned that it costs more to sort that out, and the end product's worth less. But I honestly think it's something worth looking at. I think if we can make recycling easier for our community, we'll get a higher rate of recycling, and we'll get a higher percentage of our waste going to recyclables. I think right now our program's a bit confusing, but if we give people totes to put their recyclable products in and they can pull it out, they don't have to worry about it blowing around. I always have issues at my house. I'll put my recyclables out and they'll blow in my neighbor's yard. I'd like to eliminate that problem. I think it's a very viable option to look at. We've got a really nice recycling center in Madison, and we have some people that like working down there, and it's something I'd sure like to look at.
All right, thank you, Jeremiah Corbin. Now to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert, if elected, would you support the expansion of the recycling program to include single-source recycling? And give us your thoughts on the recycling program.
Yes, I would support the recycling. When I ran against Mayor Lindsay last year for mayor, one thing he commented on that our recycling is mandatory. I'm not quite sure how we would enforce it to be mandatory. But also I would like to see getting more containers outside. I know back in my hometown in Spirit Lake, they have big containers out. People go, they know exactly where to put which container needs to have the recycling to go into. Actually, I just had a new neighbor move in next door. He commented on the recycling, that we don't take all the plastics. So he ends up taking all his recycling down to Sioux Falls. So I think we need to expand it so everybody's on the same page and get the recycling done correctly.
All right, thank you, Marshall Dennert. Now on to Danny Frisbee Griffin. Do you support the expansion of the recycling program? And give us your thoughts on recycling.
This is a discussion we have numerous times in our own home. We are a convenience nation. If it's not convenient, we're not going to do it. If we don't make it easier to recycle, people won't do it. You know, it may be mandatory, you can't enforce it. Right? It's too hard. It's too costly. It's actually, if you looked at cost of enforcing mandatory recycling versus relooking at the cost of a single source and putting all your plastics and everything into one great big bin. That's, when we moved up here 3 years ago from Omaha, that's all we did. We threw every bit of plastic, every bit of cardboard, every piece of paper, every can, everything went into one great big blue bin. There's companies down there that actually gave you rewards for the amount of recycling that you did. There's contracts out there where we can look at, where we can actually maybe take a look at some sort of a reward program for our citizens. Yeah, so we need to look at it. If we want this to be a viable program, we need to start thinking a little bit outside the container. And we have to, but we also have to marry it up with what we have in our budget. Let's be, fiscally responsible too.
Thank you, Danny Frisbee Griffin. Now, Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, do you support the expansion of the recycling program, like the single source recycling, and give us your thoughts on the recycling?
It dawned on me when you asked that question that this is one of the things I was concerned about when I ran for my first term, because I think we could at least double the amount of stuff that we recycle. I can remember when the streets were lined with bags. On every recycling day, people were putting things out regularly, and that was great. It was working, and then that's declined. The other piece is the problem is that we're having some fiscal problems with the recycling, is because about 10 years ago when things went south economically, so did all the market for recyclables, and that hasn't come back. Not well, anyway. Some slight variations, but we still, I can remember what aluminum cans were 50 and 55 cents a pound, and now I don't see anybody buying them anymore. So, but we still have a responsibility to the planet and to the ecology that we serve to make the recycling thing happen. So I think we need to look at the way to do that. Now, the single source, the buckets, that's always an option, but I think we need to raise the awareness and to do some kinds of thing, and it is a mandatory recycling. I mean, technically, we have, at times left people's stuff because they had stuff in their garbage because that could have been recycled. We do have to enforce those things. But the more stuff that we send to recycling, less loads of garbage that we pay for to send to Brookings. So there are a lot of things to put inside there. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson. Now on to Nelson. If elected, would you support the expansion of the city's recycling program to include single-source recycling, and give us your thoughts on the recycling program?
Would support it. There's always ways to make things easier. We can always just throw everything that we think is recyclable into one container. Maybe that might be the answer. Simplify it instead of sorting your plastics and cardboards and tin cans and stuff. Glass is a valuable recyclable item. I don't believe our recyclable center is taking glass. We should be taking all recyclables. Maybe we could downsize our garbage truck, save on our street surfaces with the smaller garbage truck not tearing up on the road surfaces. Simplify it like Sioux Falls. They got the cans that automatic dump into the truck. The trucks pick them up and dump them into the truck. Cans into the trucks. Simplify it for the customer. More people, make it user-friendly. If it's user-friendly, more people are going to do it.
And thank you so much. And then now, Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, do you support the recycling program, single-source recycling program, and give us your thoughts?
I'll give you my thoughts as past president of the South Dakota Solid Waste Management Association. I've been involved with them for the past 4 years. Single stream is the best thing for the customer and the worst thing for the industry as a whole. Recycling is a market-based business, and our recycling center actually makes some money. Do we make profit? No. Since the inception of single stream, customer-based satisfaction, the market has actually dropped because you get the cross-contamination of all the recyclables mixed in one can. You have increased sorting costs, and if you include glass in it, you actually lower the price of your commodity you're trying to market. I think it's a great thing for the customer. As Public Works Director, I was looking into alternative ways to recycle, and I think they're still probably on the table. It's actually having a contractor do the single stream for us. Still wouldn't include glass because as soon as you include that, you contaminate the entire load. So if you've got pristine cardboard, you're getting $110 a ton. If it's contaminated, you're down around the $55 range. So it's a real fluid market, and the better your commodity is that you're trying to market, it's the best price you're going to get. But I think it's great for the customer, but it's just bad as a whole for the industry. Thank you.
All right, Fred Snodderly, we appreciate that. All right, I think we've got time for about one more question, and then after the question, we'll move on to our closing statements. The last question, do you feel that the city is fiscally sound right now? And yes or no? And if so, what do you think needs to be changed with the city's finances? Marshall Dennert.
Tough question. In some areas, the city is sound, and there are some others that could need some help. Getting to like utility rates where we use utility rates to help meet the budgets of other departments. I'm not for that. But I'm not saying we should just give up on that department. We need to come up with a sound plan to help that department out that's not meeting their budget, and find out why and see what we can do to change that. Thank you.
Oh, Danny Frisbee Griffin, do you feel that the city is fiscally sound, yes or no? And if not, what can be changed or adjusted?
Say is that I believe right now that city is fiscally sound, and that's due to a lot of hard work by current commissioners, past commissioners, and city leaderships and mayors. I don't think it was that long ago where there was a lot of concern on the budget, and even just making the payments where things were delayed and put off as far as infrastructure. I think we're still recovering from some of that, and that's why we're making this big push, and infrastructure will always be there. So right now it's fiscally sound, but that doesn't mean you stop being fiscally observant and focused. You add something on, you need to have a funding line for it, or you're going to have to remove something. But making sure that when the budget is all finalized, it's a balanced budget. And then you're tracking against that budget, executing against that budget. You're holding people accountable for their actions and their fiscal responsibility with individual departments. That is part of the process. And that's the way the city needs to execute. Trust your employees, trust your department leaders. Have them bring concerns and problems to the commissioners and the mayor so that those can be worked as quickly as possible to keep us fiscally on track. Thank you.
Now on to Kelly Johnson. Do you feel the city's fiscally sound, yes or no? And if not, what can be done to change it?
I think we're fiscally sound at this point. We seem to, our budgets from year to year seem to be matching up, and we're managing them well. I think any crises we've faced, our employees have seen us through that and done well for us. I do think that we have to, when I was on the school board, it was always a common belief that, we have to leave the place better than we found it, which means if we're good now, we should be better when any of us are all gone from this commission and ultimately this life. So that's what I look for, is how do we provide and plan for the next generation, not just of commissioners and of government, but for the next generation. That's a critical piece. The times right now, and nobody probably knows this better than any of us in here, are tenuous for us politically. 2 weeks now, we've heard two major pieces that we've dealt with in the past come before us that it's being held up because of things in Washington. Jeremiah wisely said in one of his comments recently that, and Jeremiah's a great planner, that we have to be prepared with plans that if funding does become available, we can reach out to that funding at the federal level and get it. But right now, many things are at the planning stage. I think we're fiscally sound right now, but that ability to plan and follow those and be able to follow up on those plans is a critical piece for us right now. We are, like many other cities, limping in sales tax revenue. Okay, some of that is historic across the state. There are some things we need to do about that, but that's for my next answer.
Nelson, do you feel the city's fiscally sound, yes or no? And if not, what can be changed or adjusted?
believe we're fiscally sound right at the moment. If we stay on our budgets, maybe we can keep our rate increases, our utility increases down, so we don't have to keep fixing or adding to some other department's budgets. If they got a budget of X number of dollars, that's all that department's allowed to spend. It's no different with me at the state highway department. I get X number of dollars for highway repairs. You can go over a little bit, but you gotta justify your spending. And I don't get to raise my utility or your car tags or anything like that, so I can put more road in or better road. I got to make do with what budget I have, and we don't get to raise rates. I don't think that should be our alternative answer to our issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nelson. And now on to Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, do you feel the city is fiscally sound, yes or no? And if not, what can be changed or adjusted?
I think they are actually physically sound for the time being. I think we do have to watch long-term spending, but if it's planned right and funds are put away incrementally, I think we can actually take care of the upgrades, repairs, and enhancements that we need to do for the city.
All right, Fred Snodderly. And now on to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, tell us if the city is fiscally sound, yes or no, and if not, what can be changed or adjusted?
Yes, I think the city is in sound financial shape. It's a lot better shape than it was 3 years ago when I got on the commission. We were kind of butting against the debt cap there for a while, but over the last few years we've been able to effectively manage our resources and pay down some debt early, so we're sitting pretty good there. Our challenge now is to be responsible with the resources we have and plan ahead and make sure we can just incrementally improve the systems we have.
All right, Jeremiah Corbin, thank you. And now we're going to move on to our closing statements. Thank you so much to those of you who submitted questions this evening. We really appreciate that. And we're going to start closing statements with Mr. Danny Frisbee Griffin. And you have 2 minutes to tell the folks why they should vote for you.
All right, thank you. I'll take the first 30 seconds, and I want to talk about two jewels we have here in the community that I didn't get to mention during economic development. One is our community center, which is starting to show its age a little bit, so we got to keep a focus on it. And our membership is dwindling, so we just really need that is a draw. Dakota State University and the City of Madison and a high school and all us community members use the community center. That is a tool to be used to bring more new folks and industry to town. The other jewel is the airport. You're reading the paper tonight. I don't think there's a reason. I can't come up with a reason why it can't be the northern gateway to Sioux Falls. But what's that take? Infrastructure, first impression. The ramp work the FAA grant is currently working on, that's all part of that process, making it convenient for refueling aircraft and taking care of the pilots, not just the customers and the folks that come to visit, but also the pilot and air crew. What do you get with me? 26 years Air Force core values. Integrity first, service before self, and excellence in everything I do. That is more than just words to me. Okay? Boy, sorry, I almost lose it here because it means so much. Trust and mutual respect. I also understand that the citizens of Madison are not our customers. They're our employees, or they're our employers, I'm sorry. We work for them. They're not our customers. So we're here to do work that you want us to do as a community. I'm a fresh voice. Yes, I understand my family's new to Madison, but this is our home. We're not going anywhere. And we just love to serve and give back to the community that has welcomed us with open arms.
All right, thank you, Danny. And now to Kelly Johnson. Mr. Johnson, your closing statement.
Some things we talked about tonight are important. I guess I've talked more about planning than I ever thought how important it is in setting some goals and some visions and where we want to be in 5 years and 10 years. Every year, Chad comes in the electric department, does planning for us. We talk about, where we're adding another year, where we're going with some of our infrastructure replacement. And we take that seriously, and we take that plan seriously. We don't just tear up streets and put new streeting on, and then 2 years later or a short time later before the streets tear it up so we can get to the sewer and water and those kinds of things. There is a plan for that, and we try to stick to that plan. Right now we're facing, we just finished the 2nd Street, and that was a DOT thing, but we had part of that because when they were doing their work for resurfacing, we made sure that we were able to get into those areas and put in the infrastructure underneath that, take advantage of that. And we'll do that again when the 2nd phase of that project, when we go out to 34 and 19. There are a couple of things we need to think about. One of those things we face is we're going to be looking at Center Street, the west part of Center Street. And that's a plan. Why? Because that's a piece of water that flows out of there. So when and those kinds of things underneath, infrastructure underneath the street. So when we resurface that street, we'll be doing a lot of replacement in order to use those connections for further replacement. So we are doing a lot of planning, and those things are executed pretty darn well, I think. It's been a real education for me. Sometimes what we see going on at the city level, there's much more to it. The other thing is, I think we can do better with the recycling. We're considering that. We need to find the community who's faced what we faced and has successfully moved their way through it. And I'm sure there's somebody out there, but we'll find them. We've talked about some options of dealing with that, too. I just ask you we work together well, as I think right now we're understanding each other as a commission. And the mayor does not want to be the ordinance officer for housing and code enforcement. I found that out finally. He does not desire to do that. So I'd ask you to return me to the commission again for another year. And I appreciate your support and your being here tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, Kelly Johnson. And now to Nelson Nelson. Mr. Nelson, tell us 2 minutes to tell us your closing statement.
Just want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here and have this opportunity to speak and answer questions for you. I got 17 years with the state of South Dakota with planning, helping with the plans, helping with overseeing projects. I schedule my crew to do timely and efficiently work. We don't work and do work over again because it was not done properly the first time. I've got that from just basic work ethic. I will work hard for you. There's one thing I've learned a long time ago. First, you got to respect. You got to respect your community, and you will get results and work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now to Fred Snodderly. Mr. Snodderly, your 2 minutes to give us your closing statement.
Thank you, Chris. Thanks for everybody for coming out and listening to what the candidates have to say. Hopefully you gain some valuable insight to who we are and what we stand for. I do want to tell you that I've got 42 years experience in civil engineering and public works. I've served quite a few communities across the state and across the nation. I think that that's probably one of the things that we lack on the commission is the experience to draw from, someone that can give you some insight into the projects and help lead the staff in the right direction to take care of the needs of the Madison community. And I think I am the candidate for that. But I do want to say that the city staff is probably some of the best that I've ever worked with in my career. And I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart for giving me the opportunity to be your public works director for a while. I'd like to be back on the commission to continue to serve in capacity and help guide and lead this community. Thank you.
Fred Snodderly. And now to Jeremiah Corbin. Mr. Corbin, you have 2 minutes to give us your closing statement this evening.
I'd like to start by thanking the chamber for putting this on and letting us candidates speak, and I'd like to thank the school district for hosting us. This is great that you'll do this for us. And then I'd like to thank the people that have decided to run for commission. I think you've given us a nice, diverse background for the community members to choose who they want to lead us in the next 3 years and what direction they want to go. I've had the opportunity to serve on the commission in the last 3 years, and I think we've done a lot of good things in my time. It's impressive the amount of work and quality work the city employees have been able to get done. And I want to do it longer. I want to be in here for another 3 years and provide some stability and see what happens with these utilities. When I first came on, we were facing some pretty steep rate increases, and each year we've been able to implement an increase that has been substantially less than what was initially projected. And going forward, I think we can maintain some pretty minimal to no rate increases for the next several years because we've done a pretty successful job of managing our resources. At the same time, I think we can invest in our utilities and improve them. In the next 3 years, I want to look at ways that we can effectively manage our utilities going forward. Every year they get to be more and more part of what the city does. They're a vital resource for our community. Maybe it's time we take a look at a different way of governing them. There's a lot of communities in the area that have chosen a different path, and they seem to be excelling at that, and it's something I'd like to explore. On the electric department, we've implemented a key accounts program to address some of our largest customers, and I'm really eager to see how that turns out. I think we're going to have some great opportunity come of that by communicating further with the largest users in our community while addressing the needs of everyone. And I've just had an honor serving on the commission, and I'd love to do it for 3 more years. Thank you.
Jeremiah Corbin, thank you. And now to Marshall Dennert. Mr. Dennert, your 2 minutes.
Leave with you, if I am elected as one of your next city commissioners, I would look at ways of retiring more city long-term debts, putting needs before wants, keeping in mind that the citizens of Madison are paying the bill, and I will be your voice as city commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you, Marshall Dennert, and thank you again to all of our candidates. We really appreciate, number one, you being here tonight, and number two, for running for public office, because it's not easy, and if you win, it's not easy after that either, and so we appreciate your willingness and your desire to serve this community, and we appreciate all the audience members being here tonight, and again to the Madison School District for letting us be here, and a reminder to vote. Get out and vote on April 11th.